First of all, I'd like to point out that I don't condone rape. I have a vow of abstinence, celibacy on top of that. So, this is generally speaking. We must ask ourselves the who, what, when, where, how, why. Who, generally speaking, are associated with the rapists, as being rapists. Remember, in my other two parts, I pointed out how basically all heterosexual sex is a variation of rapes involving unfocused individuals who are made that way using chemicals and psychology. A degree of coercion, right? If you don't sleep with this person, what will happen? If you don't go for the rich people, what will happen? So therefore, you end up sleeping with somebody you otherwise wouldn't have if it wasn't for the way the system is made that has elevated these scumbags to positions of wealth and socially normative roles. Okay, so who, generally speaking, are the rapists? They are the can't get it otherwise demographic, right? They can't get the top shelf otherwise. We have some examples in the media of people like Bill Cosby and Weinstein, and but these are few and far between compared to the masses of people who are organized rapists, like fraternity guys who every once in a while get convicted. Water polo teams. Certainly, what is downplayed is the boys will be boys mentality that takes place. And, why do we call them this, right? The boys will be boys. This is an immature society. In a society where you go for immaturity, and most people are raised by women, by their mother, you can imagine how women take even more of a role of responsibility because it goes back to nature and nurture. Okay, and we'll get into that in a moment. So what? Not leveraging money and conformity in order to have sex with, in this case, on record, by mainstream definition, rape the harlots, the hypergamous gold-digging sluts who are the potential or the girlfriends or the wives of the biggest benefiters of the rape culture. All right, why do they have to rape them in the first place? Because they're hypergamous sluts. So what they're doing basically is having sex with an escort or a hooker without paying for it. They're getting coerced and tricked into sleeping with rich scum anyway. So what they're really doing, when you break it down to its pure form, you get to the bottom of it, to the idea, they don't have the money to get these women into bed. And because of that, they end up drugging them or forcibly raping them. Okay, so if they had the money, they probably would go for another woman. There are rich people that rape people in the news, but why is that there? Almost certainly part of the reason is they're scapegoated, and it is to confound the idea that rape is limited to people who don't have money or something, or people who are victimized by society. Instead, they want to put it in your head that these people are the victimizers completely, and they're not victims themselves, like Cosby and so on and so forth. Or they're mentally ill, which is also a feminist angle, right? Feminist psychology, liberal mental health, and so on. Okay, so where? In the most corrupt country, with rape rampant in the military, authority figures, colleges, etc. The most effective psychological construct is in this country. And the military budget includes propaganda, PSYOP budget, etc. They work in concert with mental health, so do schools, so do political groups, and so on. This is where it's taking place. So the who, the what, the where. Why? Because we live in a feel-good society. And part of feeling good is an attractive woman, and having sex with her is the best part of having an attractive woman. It's stupid to not see it that way. It is stupid. Whether you see sex as a holy, divine process, making love, or as just sex, it's dumb not to see it that way. So the bigger picture is ignored. And it's also why this is happening, because people don't want to admit how things are connected. Even though Rockefeller and them brag about how they've made a more thoroughly integrated system, it's stupid not to see it this way. So what are the stages, right? The dumb young groupie gets raped. Quite often by people who are in organized groups of rapists that have generational practices, such as some gangs, fraternities, rape rings. Okay, sometimes in a lot of countries, including this one, people who are in positions of authority, priests, teachers, police officers, Okay, people who are in positions of authority, that they study people all the time, human behavior. They study the system. They know how to get around it, and they can leverage who they are in more than one way to keep from being successfully prosecuted. Okay, so this is what happens in this stage, right? The young dumb groupie. Then she goes on to college, right? And sometimes they become angry feminists. Sometimes they're the rape victim that eventually cries on the shoulder of the feminist and becomes a lesbian. So you have these lesbian college feminists that are angry because there's a lot of rapes going on in their college and there's not much they can do about it. So, and they can't talk quote unquote sense into women. Isn't it ironic, right? Consensual sex, and they can't talk sense into them is part of what's pissing them off. Then they become the older, bitter, man-hating feminist that teams up with the college feminist. I'm not saying all feminists hate men, but this is generally speaking the process, whether they admit it or not. You think feminists who study, talk about rape don't get really mad about it? You think it's a coincidence a lot of them are lesbians? Of course they're man-hating fucking... I'm not even going to entertain the stupidity of the opposition view on that one. Anyway. So the nature, right, is chosen by women. I've beaten this to death in my videos. 80% of the reproductive cycle, at least, is women. Women exert as much power over, an attractive woman exerts as much power over men as pretty much the president exerts over women when you think about it. And psychologists have also agreed on this. Men think about sex all the time. So we talk about nature and nurture, right? They were raised by a woman. They're thinking about sex, which leads them to thinking about a woman, which leads them to thinking about how can I have that sex, which leads a lot of them to having rape fantasies. Ironically, the third most popular fantasy, last time I checked, with women is actually a rape fantasy. So some of them actually fantasize about being raped on top of that, which leads to some role playing. So actually when they're having sex, there's a degree of feeding into the idea of rape, even when they're having consensual sex. Ain't that a bitch? Okay, and why is it like that in the first place? Okay. Because of the nurture from women in society, their attitudes towards sex, specifically towards having sex with the more marginalized people who are more likely to be successfully prosecuted in court. Okay? So by the time these guys catch wind of all the coercion that's going on in society, all the people raping with impunity, how these scumbags who don't deserve the money they have leverage that money to get the woman that these guys can't have, you're turning good men bad. You're turning lukewarm men into evil men. You're turning kind of evil men into rapists. Okay, they're all being turned into rapists. Right, 1 in 3 women are raped, 1 in 4, right? 1 in 3 men are made rapists, 1 in 4 men are made rapists. This is why in Islam they tell women to cover up. Because society, one way or another, imperfect societies, which all societies are imperfect, lead to the desire to rape. And it is compounded by seeing cleavage. That desire is made worse by seeing cleavage, by seeing scumbags who you don't respect getting attractive women. You are insane if you don't think that's the case. What leads somebody to say, hey, I'm going to risk going in jail and getting fucked in the ass and being labeled as a felon rapist, as a felony, as a rape that you have to put on your resume? What leads somebody, not to mention being ostracized by your family and your community, what would lead somebody to make that choice just for that little piece of pussy if it isn't the things that I'm talking about and more? And let's also consider women's judgment, right? If a woman had a gun, for example, and she was willing to kill somebody for less, and some guy was coming, and it was obvious he's going to rape her, she doesn't shoot him, and she gets raped. Do we say, don't blame the victim? Or do we say, bitch, why the fuck didn't you shoot him? Why the fuck didn't you? Why the fuck? Right? We live in a society that says, don't blame the victim, and acts like bitches about it, and drugs people who ask the question, why the fuck didn't you shoot him? If you can stop it, why didn't you stop it? Why do you need to dress like a whore? If you know one of the direct effects of dressing like a whore is making people think about sex more, which leads to rape, then why do you dress like a whore? Women can stop it. They don't. You can stop the reproductive cycle of sleeping with scum. You don't. That's why they're sons of bitches, right? And I've gone over this in the other videos. Okay. All right. So there's new drugs. They make it so people don't realize they were raped. There's gaslighting, new gaslighting techniques. There's organized groups of rapists and stalkers who team up together to rape people. And we have evidence of this in the media. We have evidence. We have definitive proof. Really, there's this one case in San Antonio with Dr. John Hall. I don't agree with everything he says. I think that he probably controlled opposition in one way or another. Basically, these organized stalkers were stalking him and this Hispanic female, attractive female, and basically they drugged the food in her house and they came back to rape her. And basically there was evidence that a rape took place, but no convictions to date, last time I checked. The fuck does that tell you? Right? This is a society where they operate with impunity, and some of those stalkers are females. There are literally females every day stalking people and helping set up the situation for people to get raped. You know, and on duty, aware that a rape has taken place almost certainly. Some of them are in law enforcement. And this thing is more despicable than you think, right? You can't just say, well, this, and this, right? It is the bigger picture that is not being considered. You must consider who, what, where, when, how, and why. And so, and which demographics, okay, are being charged with it and which ones aren't. So basically women, you know, it's hard to, I go as far as to say I don't respect women as a group. I don't. I would be insane, a coward, a fool to respect them, you know, and I'd be a fool not to highlight that I don't. It has to be said. When a large group of people is acting like scum, and again, I don't respect men generally speaking either. When a large group of people acting like scum, they need to be called on it. It needs to be said. You sleep with the political opposition knowing they propound despicable falsehoods that lead to soft killing, murders, massive rapes, unfair, immoral wars, playing stupid about horrible, horrible things, while people starve to death and are being raped and tortured and abused. The people you date play stupid and uphold the social norms that allows for these despicable, reprehensible, deplorable activities to take place. You are the whore that rode the monster that upholds the system, and you are drunk on the blood of the righteous, the saints, the political activists who were uncontrolled, and every honest person that has been persecuted for telling the truth. You are scum. You are filth. Stay the fuck away from me and fuck off. I'm done.